Disgaea, Phantom Brave, Makai Kingdom. These were some of my favorite games from the PlayStation 2 generation. They were all strategy role-playing games, and they used a lot of the same themes and broad mechanics. But each one tweaked the formula in different ways, emphasizing some things more than others. Disgaea was the game that gave Nipponichi Software its cult following in the English-speaking parts of the world. It was a fairly bog-standard strategy role-playing game, but the thing that really stood out about it to me was that it was a game you could simply grind on and on and on in. There was a lot of random dungeons and lots of fiddly mechanical bits to play with. I've only completed the first Disgaea once, truth be told, because I'd spend most of my time mired in the item dungeons trying to create the ultimate team with a ridiculous theme. You could wind up with a huge army in Disgaea, which could be a problem since you only have room for 10 units on the field. I did beat Disgaea 2 a few times, but I still ran into that same problem of having an overinflated team, most of which were skulls, the male mages, and actually where I adopted the name Aron der Schädel from. Translator's note, Schädel means skull. Then a chronic case of being broke happened, and I didn't get to play a Disgaea game until 5 was ported to the Nintendo Switch and 6 was being hyped up. There was a lot of mechanical changes. But the formula remained the same. You were going to get a huge army, and you had a lot of ways to power up individuals within that army. Most striking to me from that, though, was how there was a lot of things you could do with your idle members now, or more specialized roles you could put them into to lean into certain mechanics. Disgaea worked within its inevitable conclusion. On the flip side, I also played a lot of Phantom Brave, and that was also one I only beat once. And Makai Kingdom I also beat several times. Phantom Brave and Makai Kingdom took the strategy RPG formula that Disgaea was using and took it in a slightly different direction by not confining you to a grid. Phantom Brave also introduced a new mechanic where only one character actually stayed on the field, and it happened to be your weakest one that had no capacity for fighting whatsoever. And to make things more challenging, each unit would only stay on the field for a limited amount of turns. So your army suddenly had a purpose of being so large. Kind of. It had a few other wacky mechanics, like how you could only summon units by merging them with items already on the battlefield, and they would gain traits of that item when they were summoned. Additionally, they would also bring any equipped weapons with them, and those weapons counted towards how many units you could have. So, through several incremental changes, they took a familiar formula and made something completely different. Phantom Brave's ideal strategy was making a very powerful weapon, summoning somebody onto the field with it, and passing it along as the battle went on, assuming you could not finish the battle quickly enough. Otherwise, the objective was always the same: wipe out all the enemies. And Makai Kingdom used the same sort of maps as Phantom Brave, but it twisted familiar mechanics just a little bit more. Makai Kingdom, once again, gave you a massive army with all manner of units. It also gave you facilities which could be summoned into the battlefield as if they were units, and vehicles you could have characters pilot, because the maps in Makai Kingdom could get huge. And your goal in Makai Kingdom wasn't necessarily to slay enemies, but to acquire points. Which, yes, you could gain those by slaying enemies, or you could destroy equipment lying around on the battlefield, or loot it by having a character pick it up and return it to a facility. And putting away a unit into a facility would effectively remove them from the battlefield, letting you replace them with somebody else if they got worn out or beaten up too badly. Well, the ideal strategy in Makai Kingdom was usually to take a facility with a very powerful effect, fill it with some ridiculously powerful and gished out characters, and use them to just wipe out the field as fast as possible. But through an addition or tweak to the rules here or there, they made yet another strikingly different game. So if you're wondering what this has to do with an indie D&D 5e based game, here's the premise I was working towards. Mechanics matter, and making a small change here or there can really add up. Anybody who has had the fortune or misfortune of interacting with me in any tabletop RPG space probably already knows my philosophy on homebrewing or house rules, or reading a game to take ideas from so you can add them to your D&D game. I frown upon it. I prefer people to play games vanilla at least once before they go chopping it up and trying to make something new. The analogy I like to use is liquor. Take a taste of it as it is before you go making cocktails with it. Know what it's meant to taste like before you mess with it. Reading Army Men, along with pondering the inadequacies of D&D, has got me thinking though. Particularly that I might have been sleeping on some of the D&D 5e hacks out there that exist. I see an ad for something labeled as compatible with role-playing game RPG game Fantasy 5e 5 Edition, and I immediately roll my eyes and move on. There might be good stuff out there, and it's just caught up having to play buzzword bingo so that the computer algorithm knows what to do with it. But I'm not blind to the fact that advertisements cost money, and if you're taking the time to make them and buy bandwidth for them, it's good business sense to aim for a return on that investment. So some of them could also be quickly made trash, cobbled together just to make a buck. I think I'm losing the point I wanted to make though. Tweaks to mechanics, even small ones like changing the dice, changing the fundamental nature of equipment, changing the end goal, adding or subtracting new subsystems, are a great way to breathe some new life into something that otherwise may be tired or hackneyed. Reading Army Men for this reason was a delight. I enjoyed it for the same reason that I enjoyed Mackay Kingdom and Phantom Brave, even though they were just twists to the Disgaea formula. There was enough small changes that it rippled out to create something new enough.